As we got Ross Tucker in the queue, let's bring Ross in after a quick word from FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, head over to FanDuel.com/UCSS and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. And with that, we are thrilled to welcome back Ross Tucker to the show. How you doing today, Ross?
I am doing fantastic. How are you guys doing?
Let's see how you're doing in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
You know how everybody loves, no matter what you say about Shedeur, they can slice, dice, twist. It's become, have you seen in your playing or media career, have you seen another athlete that has elicited this kind of emotion and reaction?
The only two that come to mind would probably be Tim Tebow.
Yep.
And to, I guess, a lesser extent, Colin Kaepernick. But I don't really remember Kaepernick really playing all that much, right. after he did what he did. Tebow, there was, a bunch of people that would watch him and say, he sucks. He can't throw. Are you not watching? Like, they're winning these games. He's the luckiest kid we've ever seen. He can't play. And then there was the other half that's like, he finds a way. Somehow, some way, he finds a way. He's a winner. It's leadership. So I think probably Tebow might be the most common or the closest, but still not sure it's at the same level as Shedeur.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Tebow's the other guy, and I was at First Take with Skip Bayless during those years, and Skip was Tim Tebow's biggest fan, and he used to say it every week, this guy's going to be great, he's going to be great, and we'd watch him, and he'd be 11 for 24, and he'd throw the game-winning touchdown pass after doing nothing for 4 quarters, and then we'd have to come in on Monday and listen to Skip say how he was right and how he's great, and ultimately we remember how it turned out. But man, was he divisive, and he was also a ratings juggernaut, as is Shedeur. The other guy, I don't know if you remember this or not, and it was brief, and it wasn't as hot, but when Jeremy Lin came into the NBA, he had a similar impact because everybody kept watching him and saying, this isn't sustainable. How is he doing this? And he flamed out even quicker than Tebow did when he left New York.
If you factor in the social media aspect of this, there's no comparison really. Because
there was social media though during the Tebow boom.
Yeah, but not to this degree, not the way people use it now.
I'll agree with that.
And people are on the extremes of both sides are out of their minds when it comes to this. But Ross, the truth is that yourself and a lot of other people thought the Browns led us to believe that Shedeur Sanders wasn't ready to play and that Dillon Gabriel was more ready to play. And they gave the impression that if Shedeur came in, things would be worse than it was with Dillon Gabriel. And that's clearly not been the case, right? The offense has been better with Shedeur than it was at any point with Dillon Gabriel, certainly this last game. And so how would I have any faith in Kevin Stefanski at this point if he truly believed Dillon Gabriel was better than Shedeur?
You know what I think I find fascinating about that is that we see stuff like this happen all the time. And what a lot of people like to do is say, well, the coaches know. I mean, the coach, they're the ones around them every day.
Yeah.
The coaches know. There's a lot of examples of coaches, front office executives, whoever, having one guy start and that's the guy, and they don't know. I mean, listen, you don't think that if Bill Belichick and Scott Pioli, they didn't know what they had in Brady.
That's correct.
I mean, They liked Brady. They kept him as the backup. But if they knew he was going to be Tom freaking Brady, they would have benched Bledsoe before Mo Lewis hit him. You know, the point is I think on some level, you don't know what you have until they're out there. And how would you? You know, I don't know. Shedeur Sanders, I mean, he got hurt once at least during training camp. And The first preseason game, he did some good things. Second game, he didn't play at all. Third preseason game, he was awful. So they have Flacco and whatever. They have Gabriel, who looked pretty good in that second preseason game against the Eagles. And then during the season, Shedeur is really just doing the scout team. So how would they have any idea of really knowing how he would perform other than their perception of him from practice and meetings, etc.? And obviously, they really did not think that he would be able to play at this high of a level, and or they thought that Dylan Gabriel was better, gave him a better chance to win. I think that those guys are probably different from a personality standpoint. I think they're probably different in terms of in a meeting, how they would come across, maybe their football knowledge. You know, Shedeur Sanders, I would say, having spoken with him now, is probably non-traditional in terms of when you meet with him, as well as, and I heard this from multiple people, sort of how he sees the game, how he learns the game. In other words, he's a gamer. I think he's much better on the field with a natural feel for spatial awareness, how the game's unfolding. I think that he's got a gift in that regard, and that he's much better actually out there in a game situation than he would be in the meeting room telling you where he's supposed to go with the ball on certain plays against certain coverages. But that becomes really hard for coaches. It becomes really hard for coaches if the guy can't do a great job of explaining where he should throw the football based on what you're telling him you want him to do. But yet then when he goes out there on the field, he does a much better job than he does when he's at practice or certainly in the meeting room. I mean, that would be tough for any of us, I think.
Ross, one guy that Shedeur's throwing the football to is Harold Fannin, who's had a really remarkable rookie year for a third-round pick. You know, you cover the league, you watch all these other teams, and where do you put him with the other rookie tight ends that you've seen and maybe even seen over the last several years? I mean, it seems like he's got a chance to be a pretty good player.
I love him. I love Fannin for so many reasons. First of all, he'll get after you as a blocker. You know, he's not some massive dude, but he'll get after you. He can play about a zillion different places and positions. H-back, fullback, wing, slot, split out, wide tight end. I mean, all of those things. His run after the catch, you know, that was my famous from a couple weeks ago, Ernest Mack, I think I said, you know, when Harold Fannin was running people over. It was so funny because I think I told you guys this, but I'm watching and it's like I was thinking Kevin Mack, but then I thought Kevin Mack's 34, not 44. Anyway, at any rate, you guys knew what I meant. And then to high point the ball or make contested catch like he did against the Titans, to get open like he did against the Niners. I mean, that was a terrific pick. And it's funny because he was so productive at Bowling Green, but he kind of runs a little awkward and, you know, does not look overly athletic, looks a little stiff at times, and didn't run a great 40 time. And Stefanski told us in one of the production meetings that they were thrilled when he ran such a bad 40 time because it made them feel like they had a better chance to get him in the third round as opposed to having to move up or get him in the second round. So, obviously, to get Schlesinger where they got him, to get Fannin where they got him, on some level to get Judkins where they got him, I don't think there's that much of a difference between Judkins and Ashton Genty. You know, when you watch them, I don't know. I mean, they seem like pretty similar to me. So to get those guys where they got him, and potentially Shedeur where they got him, it's really truly impressive.
I want to circle back, Ross, to some of the things you said about Shedeur, because I'm fascinated by this. You know, in a way, it reminds me of when Bill Polian very famously said about Lamar Jackson that he'd be a wide receiver. There's a lot of groupthink in sports, right? We see this all the time. Somebody does something well, and everybody wants to copy. We see a lot of groupthink. And if Lamar Jackson had come into the league 20 years earlier, he would not have been as successful because there would be too many coaches, maybe all coaches, who were unwilling to be creative, to say this guy has he doesn't fit the norm. He has to play a different way. And instead of trying to force him into the way I want him to play, we're going to take his strengths and play to it. And I still think there's not enough coaches to do that, but he fortunately ended up in an organization that would. And I think this, on some level, that's what's happened in this whole process with Shedeur Sanders. And I don't know him personally, obviously, and I'm not an expert on college football, so I don't know really what his future holds. But I do think, yes, I said this the other day, what you just said. He doesn't sound like a traditional quarterback. He doesn't play like there's nothing traditional about him. But the smart teams and the good coaches will say, hey, if this guy's good, I got to find a way to connect with him on whatever level, whatever frequency he's running at, and not just say, you got to be on my frequency. The good coaches, I think, can change their frequency to connect with players who might be special. And we'll see. And I'm rambling a little bit here, but I think all of this led to him dropping in the draft, and ultimately why the Browns were whispering that he's not ready when clearly he is ready to play. We'll see how good he does going forward. There'll be some inconsistency, but there's been a lot of misevaluation, I think, of Shedeur Sanders along the way. I've rambled. What do you make of what I've said there?
Well, so one thing that you said that resonated with me was I do think it's interesting, the Lamar Jackson comparison, in the sense that, you can argue that Lamar, especially when he was a rookie, didn't sound like a starting quarterback, whatever that even means, right? And certainly didn't play like the perception of a starting quarterback. I think, to Bill Polian's point, Polian's success in Buffalo was Jim Kelly. In Indianapolis, it was Peyton Manning. The belief was you couldn't really have a quarterback run that much. They're going to get hurt. It's not going to work. They're not going to be able to last through the year. And I give the Ravens a tremendous amount of credit. The Ravens said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's have a lot of quarterback run game, and, hopefully he can get out of bounds or slide. And, they took the world by storm. That's why he was the MVP that year. Nobody had any idea how to stop him. But he was non-traditional in multiple ways. And I think Shedeur's obviously not the athlete that Lamar is, although he's better athlete than I think he gets credit for. I really like that rushing touchdown. And even taking the shot in the end zone. My favorite thing about Shedeur Sanders at Colorado was just how tough he is. That guy got blasted so many times, and he just kept coming. But he is non-traditional. And so what I would say is, in both when you meet with him on some extent and how he sees and talks the game. And so I think that is, Bull, probably hard. I think everybody knows this, but once he didn't go in the first round, so let's take a step back, okay? If you're taking a quarterback in the first round or on some level high in the second, you're basically going to say they're the starter. And if you're a GM or a head coach, you're kind of putting your fate, your future, your career in their hands. And I can see how if you met with Shedeur, you would think, boy, I don't know if that's who I want to put, my career in their hands of, because he is sort of non-traditional. And then what happened is, after that was the case, you didn't want to take him in the second, third round or whatever, because then you didn't want the most talked about guy on the roster to be a backup quarterback. I think that hurt him. You didn't want all of the scrutiny and attention for a guy that was a backup quarterback. And I think that the Browns organization actually deserves a lot of credit for taking him when they did. There were other teams, I strongly believe, that were going to take him on that third day, but the Browns kind of beat him to it, and the Browns took him before some of these other franchises were going to, and now they've got a real asset on their hands. I don't know if he's a long-term franchise quarterback or even a starting quarterback, but he sure as heck was a good 5th-round pick. So, let's even say that the Browns at the end of this year still don't think he's the guy for them long-term. They'd be able to flip him now for a higher pick. I mean, that would be a good transaction by Andrew Berry. Let's just say the Browns had the number 1 pick, and they love Mendoza, and they think Mendoza is, a franchise guy for years, and they take Mendoza. They could now flip Shedeur, I would think, for way better than a 5th-round pick because he's still young and he's shown a lot of promise. And so they kind of took the arrows and the attention and whatever that goes along with having Shedeur, and they've really created some value there now for the organization.
Yeah, it might sound like hyperbole, but we parsed this out Monday. When you look at their draft class, it's certainly the best draft class that they've put together probably in 20 years. You've got a tight end who's already broken the team's receiving record for a rookie tight end. We've got 4 games to play. He's probably going to finish with 900 receiving yards. You've got a running back who's on pace to go over 1,000. You've got a linebacker who is going to demolish the rookie all-time single-season tackle record. Should break it in 2 weeks with 2 weeks to play. And then you mentioned the Shedeur thing too. So that's how organizations can turn things around really quickly, is to hit on a lot of those picks. And whether Shedeur lasts or he turns into a chip, either way, it's positive. We only have a minute and a half to go here. I know you have a heart out. You met with Shedeur. You've talked briefly about some of the things. A couple of visits ago, we asked you about your experience with Shedeur last year when you were doing one of his college games. And there was some wires crossed. You actually didn't really get to talk to him. A lot was said and written about that. How are you on Shedeur as a person after you've actually sat across from him and you had a chance to meet with him in one of your pre-production meetings now?
Yeah, you know what? He's got a great way about him. He's got a great smile, and he's got sort of an infectious personality. You can see why he's so well liked by his teammates. He's very genuine, very authentic. Again, I would say, a little non-traditional in the sense that, maybe some of the responses were shorter than they typically are, and then some of the responses were longer than maybe they typically are, and you weren't necessarily sure which one you were going to get depending on the question that you asked. But the thing, and I said this during that Raiders game, I loved a couple of the things he said, Jay. Yeah. He said he felt like he was getting back to normal, and I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, having all the pressure, having everybody counting on me. Like, he wanted that. And then when I brought up the story I had heard about him carrying his iPad around all around the facility, even at meals, and someone describing it like he was cramming for a test, his response was, I don't have a choice. This is my opportunity. Yeah, I love people that understand opportunities are not perfect in life in general, certainly not in the NFL, and that you got to figure out a way to make the most of whatever you're given, whatever morsel of opportunity you're given, you got to make the most of it. And maybe that's from his dad, or maybe he just knew that.
Yeah.
But he very much understood that if it went really bad against the Raiders, that might be it. And obviously it didn't go bad, and they won the game, and he played well. And it feels like he's continuing to build on that and make the most of this opportunity. And so I really, really appreciate people that understand that, and I'm rooting for him. I love late round picks. I love undrafted guys. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, he's Prime's kid, no doubt about that. He loves the spotlight, and he seems to raise his game when he's in it.
I couldn't, but real quick, right before the game starts, we're interviewing him, and Tiffany says, what would you say to all the Browns fans, that have been eagerly anticipating your first start? And he looks at the camera and says, I'm the guy you've been waiting for.
That's awesome. Baby Prime.
I could not believe he said that. I was like, this is going to be awesome. That was amazing.
He really is hard to root against. He's a likable kid, and let's just hope it keeps continue going up. Ross,
Thanks,
we love
Ross.
your expert analysis. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.